Hey everybody, it's Brian Woodworth, and I wanted to do this video for you because I wanted to share my personal spiritual journey with you. And I wanted to kind of give you an idea of where that started, and so that you'll have a better understanding of maybe what to look forward to or what you can be in store for. But I think the best way to do that is to start by giving you a brief backstory, if you shall, about how I was brought up and where it all began. So, for me, I was brought up in a Catholic family with a Catholic background. That was not by choice, obviously, because my family was Catholic and I was too young to make the choice myself. So it was just one of those things where I just did because the rest of the family did it. Well, as I got older, I started noticing that I wasn't having that kind of connection that I was looking for at that time. And so I started going to a non-denominational Christian church. Well, for a large part of my life, that was the way I was fed spiritually. But then from that, I started growing and I started asking questions. So most of my life has been with a religious or a Christian background. So that's kind of the context of what I knew and what I was conditioned to know and to believe. It wasn't until I started getting older that I started asking questions, and I wanted to know more of what I called the truth, because some things just weren't adding up for me. Now, keep in mind, my spiritual journey has obviously been going on my entire life, but I really became aware of my spiritual journey and my spiritual growth about 13 years ago. And what had happened was, up to that point, I thought I was going in a direction that was on a good direction or a good plane or a good trajectory, but it was all still based in Christianity. And I was connected, I was going to church, I was doing Bible study, all the things that a good Christian is supposed to do. But there was still something missing. I found myself still extremely distracted. I was going in and out of church and in and out of reading the Bible, so there wasn't anything that was consistent, or at least what I thought should be as consistent as it should. Well, as life went on, I started getting more distracted, and I started putting most of my time and energy towards the things that were really unimportant, like building a business and creating wealth and creating the things that I thought were going to make me happy. And where a big shift happened in my life overall, and especially from a spiritual standpoint, was about 13 years ago. And what had happened was I was in a relationship with a gal that was a fairly long-term relationship, about 4 years, and that relationship didn't end well. And completely because of a choice that I made, and I take full responsibility for that. But when that happened, a huge shift started happening in my life. And to give you a little backstory about that, not to give you all the details of it, but I made a choice that I shouldn't have made, and the gal that I was dating found out that I made this choice, and she was really hurt, very disappointed, extremely angry at me. And I remember getting the phone call from her, and I was back in Kansas City when this happened, and I remember hearing her say the words to me, "I can't believe you're doing this. I never want to hear from you again, and you need to come back because I'm taking your dogs back to your place." And in that moment, I can remember feeling just about every emotion that a person could feel. I felt embarrassed. I felt disappointed with myself. I was hurt, scared, surprised, you name it. Every emotion that I could think of was coming through me. And the one that stuck out the most was disappointment. And it was disappointment in myself because of the choice that I made. And although the choice needed to be made, the way I went about it was very cowardly on my part. And I remember sitting there asking myself, what am I doing? What have I done? What have I become? What has my life become? And it was in that moment that I knew that I had to make some significant changes in my life. And I knew that I knew I'd become somebody that I didn't want to be, and I knew that I had become somebody that I wasn't created to be. And so I really had to start focusing on where I'd gotten in my life and how I'd gotten so off track. And so I went on a personal journey, and I submerged myself into just about every kind of self-improvement, personal development that you can think of. Read just about every book on the subject, and because I was determined to get back on track, because I knew I was so far off track and had become somebody that I didn't want to be. And so through that process, I really started discovering who I was and who I really wanted to be. And there was a time after that relationship, it was probably 6 months after this, and I still wasn't completely through processing the emotions because we'd been together for so long. And I remember a gal coming into my life, or attempting to come into my life, who was an amazing woman. And knowing that I hadn't completely processed through all those emotions, I had to sit her down, and I said to her, I could be missing out on one of the greatest opportunities of my life, not, being with you. I said, but because I'm not completely finished processing through all the emotions of my past relationship, I can't bring you into my life at this point because I don't want to make you a casualty. And I said, because if she would call me up and say, hey, let's see if we can work through this, because of the time that we had together and spent together and invested together, I would at least give her that opportunity, and at least give us that opportunity. And I told this gal, I said, look, I'm not willing to make you a casualty of that. Because if you come into my life, you develop feelings, that happens, and I had to tell you, after you've developed feelings, hey, I'm going to go give this a shot to see if we can salvage it. Now I just left you being a casualty. And I said, I'm not willing to do that to you. I said, I respect you way too much as a woman, and I respect you too much as a human being to do that to you. And she looks at me like I was from outer space, and she says, wow. She says, I've never had a guy be that honest with me and consider my feelings that much. And she says, I just want to say thank you for that. And it was in that moment that I knew, probably for the first time in my life, certainly on this level, what authenticity felt like. And I said to myself, I want more of that in my life, because that feeling that I was making the right choices and doing the right things and really loving people like I'd never loved people before, and to put them first. And that was a huge shift for me, where from that moment forward I started living my life totally different. I started becoming more the person that I wanted to be, and certainly more the person that I was created to be. So at that point I was still in and out of my Christian belief system and upbringing. And was going to the church on a regular basis and was reading the Bible and going to Bible class, and but still something just wasn't fitting for me. And so I had to really explore that, and I started asking the deeper questions, and I just wanted to know the truth, because I didn't want to just do something that somebody else told me that I was supposed to do. I remember years ago being in a coaching class that we were doing, and we were doing a process that talked about choices and decisions, and in this process I realized how little autonomy people had in their life, and how little autonomy that I had in my life at that time. And I knew that this process would make a person become aware of how little or how much autonomy that they had in their life. And so I got on this autonomy kick where I was like, oh my goodness, I mean, if people just realize how little autonomy that they've had for the most of their life, if not all of their life, it'd be this big revelation that people would say, holy crap, you know, my life has become something that somebody else has wanted it to be, or something else that I was told it should be, whether it's society, religions, family, you name it. There's all kinds of things that take a person away from their autonomy. So I started really asking the deeper question that says, well, wait a minute. If there's so little autonomy in a person's life, and there's all of these belief systems, this conditioning, you know, what gives? So I really started taking a deeper look into that, and again, asking the deeper questions. And what was amazing to me is that I kept seeing so much conditioning in a person's life, and how belief systems were completely controlling a person's life, and they hadn't even really discovered or explored those belief systems in the first place. And so, again, I started asking the deeper questions. I kept seeing myself, because again, at this point, my Christian upbringing belief systems were fairly strong. And I remember myself becoming more self-righteous and judgmental, which didn't resonate with me, and it didn't feel right to me at all. And I didn't understand what that was about, because as a good Christian, you're not supposed to have judgment. You're not supposed to have this self-righteousness, but it was showing up for me. And I started seeing and realizing and becoming aware of even the limitations that religion and Christianity places on a person. And the big one for me was when I realized the belief systems around religion and Christianity when it comes to the gay community. And I have amazing gay friends, and I couldn't understand how a religion or a theology could judge a group of people that in this case just happen to be gay, when the whole idea and belief system was supposed to be love. I couldn't understand where the love was when you were judging a group of people, like I said, in this case, that happened to be gay, and how you could seclude them from loving them. And that was a big shift for me, because I knew that there was something fundamentally flawed in that belief system or that theology that I just could no longer overlook, because I wanted the truth. And when it's all said and done, the truth is love. And if there's an absence of love, when there's judgment or seclusion or division, there's something fundamentally flawed with that belief system. And so I started again asking the deeper questions, and I remember laying in bed, and a thought came to me that said, what if Christianity isn't the end, but it's the beginning? And I remember having that thought that just came out of the blue, and this is at a time where my faith in Christianity was strong. And I'm laying in bed after that thought came to me, thinking, holy shit, am I going to get struck by lightning? Because that went so far against or different from the traditional Christian belief system. And the next thought that came to me was, Brian, that wasn't your thought. I gave that to you. And then I would kind of laugh and joke. I'm like, well, good, because I don't give myself that much credit to think that way. Certainly not at this point in my life. And now I can stop worrying about if I'm going to get struck by lightning. So it was a relief on a couple different levels. So when that came to me, you talk about asking the deeper questions before. I started asking even deeper questions because I knew that there was something to that, because I knew that it wasn't coming from me. Now, I know some of the people in the religious sectors and the Christian sectors will say, oh my God, the devil's got a hold of him. And no, that's not the case, because when you know and you become fully aware of who we are and what we are, that doesn't even exist. So rest assured, the devil doesn't have a hold of me. I'm still pure love. And everything I do is from a loving perspective. But after that thought came to me, the questions started getting even more deep. And I started asking things about the Bible, about Christianity in general, and about religions. And I kept seeing and being shown all of this amazing information that most people from a Christian or a religious background have been told not to ask, not to question. You never question God, or you never question the theology. And it's all based out of fear. Well, if the God that somebody is praying to or believes in is a God that is fear-based, there's an absence of love in that belief system. And I just couldn't allow that, or couldn't accept that anymore. And so the big shift came was when I said out loud, again, when I was strong in my Christian belief, I said, God, if you're really there, like I think you are, like I've been told you are, like I want you to be, I want you to show me. But I don't want a middleman. I don't want your son, Jesus Christ. I don't want the Bible. I don't want a pastor. I don't want a priest. I don't want something I've been told, what I've learned, what I thought was true. I want the truth coming straight from the source. Now, at this time, I consider the source being God, this finite type object that lives in the sky and is going to grant all of your prayers and wishes. Well, now, most people in the religious and Christian sectors would say, oh my goodness, you can't do that. You can't question God. Well, I'm in a different place, because I know, even more so now today, that if you want the truth and you're willing to ask from a pure heart and a place of love, you can ask anything you want. Because until the truth becomes more important than your beliefs or what you've been told or what you think is true, you're always going to limit yourself, and you're never going to know the full truth. So that's when something really big started shifting in my life. And as you can see, I didn't get struck by lightning, declaring that or having that thought or putting that out there, because I was doing it from a place of pure love. And again, because I wanted the truth. So I started going from this idea, well, maybe there is more to this idea of God, because even that idea of God is limiting, because identifying as God, the idea, the knowing, is you're limiting, because you're creating God to be a finite object, which has a beginning and has an end. Just by the mere definition of calling it and identifying it as God. It's male version. It's an object which has a beginning and an end. So knowing that, I was like, well, God is not limited, even from what I know at this point. So I started referring to God as divine because, again, I wanted the truth and I wanted it coming from the source. And if God was limited, there had to be something that was bigger and more expansive and limitless and infinite than God. So I said divine. For me, it just felt right at the time because it was more expansive. It was without limitations. So I started saying divine instead of God. I started questioning passages in the Bible because there's a passage in the Bible that talks about let us make people in the like mind of us. I'm paraphrasing, by the way. And I'd read that passage I don't know how many times, but this time one word jumped out at me, and it was us. Now, I've always been told that there was only one God, and that came through me so intensely, knowing that there was something there, that I had to explore it. Now, again, I know the argument from a lot of Christians and a lot of religious people will be that's the Trinity, the Holy Trinity. Well, I'm not here to convince anybody of anything, but what I would do is I would ask you to question and challenge and explore that belief and see what really shows up, and ask yourself what your experience is of the Trinity, because you may discover that what you believed and what you've been told, especially by religions, it's not actually the truth. But again, I'm not here to convince you of anything. I'm asking you to just explore that possibility and know that that exploration process is bringing you towards the truth. So I started saying divine because for me it was the highest source at the time that I knew. Well, then it got even more intense and more fun and interesting because, again, I started asking the deeper questions. And I went into a 7-month meditation where I did nothing but meditate and the necessities, grocery store. I worked out once a day. But other than that, I was in meditation because I was seeking the truth. I wanted the truth coming to me straight from the source, whatever the source was at this point. And that's when things became extremely fun, fascinating, beautiful, because things were starting to come into me and things were starting to become aware that I would have never guessed would have came to me before, because I was so limited to the belief systems of Christianity and religion that I was limiting myself. When we stop placing limitations on ourselves through religions, conditioning, beliefs, and things of that nature, what you will discover will blow your mind. And that's what was happening for me. So after a 7-month meditation, I came out one day and everything came together. And it was in that moment I was aware of the truth, what I call the ultimate truth, that every human being on this planet is searching for. And it's the same ultimate truth that every human being that has ever been on this planet has been searching for. And it's the answer that ends suffering. It's the answer that allows a person to have all the love, joy, happiness, peace, and abundance that they desire. The beautiful thing about it is it's not outside of you. It's who and what you are at your absolute true nature. The problem with that is that most people will never take the time or the effort and spend the energy in discovering and exploring to even become aware of what your true nature is. I can tell you this, who and what you are at your absolute true nature is the only thing that will give you the consistent love, joy, happiness, peace, and abundance that you're looking for. Because that is who you are. That is what you are at your absolute true nature. So I tell you this because my journey is going to show up totally different than yours. what I ask you to do is just take that journey. Put yourself in a place to explore your beliefs and challenge the things that you've been told, and allow the limitations that you've placed on yourself and society has placed on yourself to fall away, because those limitations alone will take you far enough away from your true nature that you'll never be able to discover it, and you'll never have the life that you truly desire. So again, I'm not here to convince you or anyone of anything. What I'm here to do is encourage you to start challenging your belief systems, exploring them, allowing the limitations that have been placed on you to fall away, and see what shows up. You may be surprised, and you may discover the magical life that you've always desired and you've always been seeking for. But again, I'm Brian Woodworth. I appreciate you watching this. Look forward to some more videos, because I am going to be putting up new content on some amazing things that have been brought to my attention and that I've become aware of. And I'm doing this so that you and others can start having the life that they truly desire. Stay well.